Storms, they come, they go. They know to ride the breeze. Life is not always still. Find your way back. Let it flow. Guide where to go. Let it flow. Guide where to go.
Hi, I'm MamaCass Bear. Now, obviously, this is not a real name. I'm going to tell you all about how my entire life was destroyed and how I'm trying to put it back together again and save my children, and about why I'm using this name, and about why, right now, I'm asking for some help. MamaCass Bear is the name that I created so that I could start a YouTube channel and still be anonymous. I wanted to be able to talk about my own life and experiences so that the very many people who have suffered in the same way could relate to me, and yet I also couldn't risk any consequences for myself or for my children. So I became MamaCass. Since becoming MamaCass a couple of years ago, I have taught myself how to do solo filmmaking, and I've started to put out a few videos on my channel, Rematriate, and this video will be on there. I started the channel to help other people like me, women who had tried to protect their children and had been punished by the system for doing this. Punished by having our children stolen from us and given to the very abusers that we were trying to protect them from. This is a phenomenon called protective mother syndrome. This is a term that was coined by Lundy Bancroft, who is the world's foremost expert on domestic violence. He created the term because he had seen it happen so many times. Abusive men steal children from mothers who try to protect these children from that abuse. It's sad. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't lived it. It is the last and most damaging act of abuse that a man can enact on the woman that he abuses. If she tries to stop him from harming her children, he steals her children from her. This happens to thousands and thousands of women every year. It happened to me 12 years ago. 12 years ago, my 4 youngest children were stolen from me because I believed my eldest daughter about the horrific abuse that her stepfather had subjected her to. 12 years ago, I was a stay-at-home mom with 5 kids. I had a house that my own mom had bought for us. I had an 8-passenger van. I had an income from the government. It wasn't a lot, but it was enough to get by. And I had a wonderful circle of friends. My absolute best friends were other mothers. We all shared our time and our children in an amazing and supportive community. babysitting for each other, celebrating holidays and birthdays, and just having an absolutely terrific time. These were the best years of my entire life. I am so glad that I enjoyed them to the fullest, because it didn't last. My ex-husband destroyed my entire life and left me homeless with no income, no vehicle, and I only just managed to hold on to my life because I knew that I had to live. I had to live so that my innocent children weren't robbed of their mother too, in addition to being robbed of their home and their family and their friends and their childhood. Over these 12 years since then, I have literally been fighting for my life. 4 years into my battle, my health took a turn for the worst, and I was diagnosed with a rare, severe form of diabetes, latent autoimmune diabetes in adults, or LADA, also sometimes called type 1.5. A few months after being diagnosed, I developed a blister on the bottom of my left foot because I wore the wrong pair of work boots while flagging traffic on a construction site, running back and forth all day long in boots that were too big for me. Ta-da! Blister. The blister popped, and it bled, and then it became infected, and then the infection moved into the bone. I was in and out of hospital for months, trying different antibiotics, several surgeries, all to try to cure that infection. None of it worked. With my dark humor, I joked that I was dying of a broken heart and a black and rotten toe. But on Halloween of 2017, I had that toe and a tendon and a sizable chunk of the top of my foot amputated. A wonderful vascular surgeon saved my foot and my leg, and yes, my life. It was only after this surgery that I could finally begin the long months of actually healing. But while I was in hospital fighting for my life, my ex-husband, who I call Father Demon here because I'm not going to use his name, had my parental rights severed in court. There was now no way that I could ever regain custody of my children. That battle was lost. I am still fighting though. I am still alive, and so I am always going to do everything that I can for my children, for my cubs. I'm never giving up. Over these 12 years, I have been working very hard to earn enough money to try to build my life back again after losing absolutely everything. I've been working mostly in factories, but also on demolition sites, on construction sites, in sawmills, and on solar farms in all kinds of weather. Yeah, I have been out there taking cut lumber off of a saw and stacking it in minus 40 degrees in a blizzard. I've done it all. I will always do whatever I can, whatever I have to do to survive and to be there for those who I love. So I have kept working through all of these years, despite being a middle-aged woman, despite my health problems, despite everything. I just go to work. 4 years ago, in the middle of the pandemic, my mom died. I was heartbroken that my children never got to see their grandmother again. The grief was overwhelming. But then, the day after my mother died, my eldest son called me. I didn't know it then, but this was the beginning of a new beginning. Finally. My son was now over 18, and he had been thrown out of the house by his father demon's girlfriend. It was her house. She threw him out. Once he turned 18, They weren't getting any money from the government for him anymore, and so they just threw him out. They literally threw him out of the house with absolutely nothing, way out in the countryside. He had to ride his bike 80 kilometers, or 50 miles if you don't know metric, so that he could get into the nearest city where he had a friend. When he called me, he had been living with his best friend and his best friend's mom for several months. He had gotten a job at a factory himself. Over the next few months, we reconnected. It wasn't easy, but we rebuilt our relationship after so many years apart. Now, the name that I use here for my eldest son is Man Cub, because he has grown into a wonderful and very tall young man. I decided to hire on full-time at the deli meat factory that I was working in, and then a few months later, Man Cub and I found an apartment in the city together. Over the last couple of years, my other 3 stolen kids have also reached out to me, and I've even seen them a couple of times. They are not free of their father demon yet. The process of coming to terms with who he really is takes a long time, and they go back and forth. And they've been through a lot. And the youngest 2, they're still in his custody because they're still under 18. Even though I can't really help them right now because I don't have a home for them anymore, they all know that I am here for them in the long run. We have talked about my long-term plans to make us all a home together where they will have everything that they need, and they will also have complete freedom to come and go as they wish. They know that they just have to survive until they are old enough to escape, and that I'm doing everything in my power to make that home for us all together. But right now, first, I have to take care of Man Cub, and that is why I'm asking for help right now, because I have tried to do this by myself, and I'm really sorry, but I failed. I would like to explain to you how it is that I have failed, because it's not that I didn't try. Now, I'm speaking to you right now from that apartment that we got together. I call this apartment City Den. City Den is Man Cub's home. It is the only place that has ever been entirely his own, and where he doesn't have anyone who doesn't love him in his space, annoying and, yes, abusing him. Man Cub has been diagnosed as both autistic and ADHD. He also has profound trauma from what his father demon and his girlfriend, the step monster, did to him. So finally having this place to call his own, even this crappy basement apartment in this rundown slum full of drug addicts that are fighting and screaming outside every day, just having this little home is monumental for him. He's made a lot of progress in his healing journey in the 3 years that we have shared this apartment. It is his first true home. City Den is a second home for me. I need a place to stay in the city so that I can work. Now, do you remember when I told you that I lost my home after my cubs were stolen? Well, I had to move in with my boyfriend at that time. He has 50 acres and a tiny old farmhouse about an hour's drive north of this city. I call him my Papa Bear here because he's so devoted to his family and his daughter and his grandchildren. And I call our home way out in the countryside Wildernest because it is my refuge and the place where I'm working on rebuilding my life. 12 years ago, Papa Bear used to work in this city and drive back and forth every day. So originally, after I had to move in with him, I did that too, and we coordinated our work schedules together. Over time, though, his health has deteriorated too, and he has now been forced to retire for medical reasons. So, I need a place to stay in town because I can't drive anymore. Over the 7 years since my amputation surgery, I have had many other health problems. I almost went permanently blind. And now I've been receiving treatment for severe diabetic retinopathy, stage 4 proliferated diabetic retinopathy. I get injections into my eyeballs, and I've had a lot of laser surgery. My eyes have now mostly stabilized, but I haven't gone back to driving yet. I'm actually going to need cataract surgeries before I can have prescription glasses. So that's going to be another obstacle for me to overcome, and I will. But in the meantime, I have stayed with friends in town off and on for several years while working as a temp. But I wasn't able to commit to a full-time job until I had CityDen. This is the reality of living with multiple disabilities. I couldn't work at home as it's so far out into the wilderness, and we didn't have internet available. I couldn't drive, so I had to stay in the city. But I couldn't afford to rent a place of my own, so I couldn't commit to a permanent job. With the stability of CityDen, though, things have been different. I have now been able to stay working at the same place for more than 3 years. And if ManCub had been able to keep working, we would have been fine. I mean, it was tight, very tight, but we were just making it. We would have been okay. But the reality is that only about 25% of autistic people manage to hold full-time permanent employment. Now, I didn't realize this 4 years ago. I have since learned that statistic, and I have seen it happen in my own son's life. ManCub has really struggled with trying to work. Now, he had a job when he contacted me the day after Mom died, but it was not yet a permanent job. He had been enrolled in a program that trains people to work in factories so they don't have to be on income support. After his father demon and stepmonster threw ManCub out, he had been receiving income from the government, what we have traditionally called welfare around here. I don't know what they call it where you live. Sometimes it's called being on the dole. We call it welfare. He enrolled in this program that trained people with the intent to get a full-time job and then be able to have his own home. A few weeks after he contacted me, he moved into a rented room. He was paying $800 a month to rent a furnished room. It looked like he was starting to build his life, and then at the very end of his 3-month probation period at work, they fired him. He had been struggling because the work was very hard on him, and it was hard for him to get back and forth to the factory. He was riding his bike in the early morning hours before the sun came up, and in the middle of the Canadian winter. Once he finished his bike ride in the cold and the snow and the dark, he was working all day in a refrigerated factory, pin-boning whitefish on a high-speed production line. He hated it. It was physically painful. It stressed a shoulder injury that he got working in the stepmonster's garden. Yeah, she was using my children as field slaves. But ManCub pushed through the pain as best he could. He did ask to be given a different task, so they put him in charge of keeping the floor clean and moving bins around, and he didn't mind that. But they were constantly putting him back on the pin boning line. He was good at it, so they kept putting him back there. And they kept forcing him to work overtime, 10 and 11-hour days. He would get back to his rented room, and he was so stressed out, so exhausted, in so much pain from repetitive motion, that he would end up sick. A very common occurrence for autistic people is that stress causes trouble with the gastrointestinal tract and with sleeping as well. There were too many mornings where ManCub had to call in sick because he hadn't slept at all. Instead of sleeping, he had spent the whole night in the bathroom. It happened too many times, and so they fired him. ManCub was heartbroken, and he was panicked because he didn't know how he would get money to live. I calmed him down, and I helped him to set up his very first employment insurance claim. He was okay for a few months. During that time, I found this apartment. I found City Den. Now, because rents doubled here during the pandemic, this apartment was the only place that we could afford, and it was still, as I said, very, very tight. And it's only my name that's on the lease because Man Cub didn't have a job at the time, and I did. So, a couple of months after we moved into City Den, Man Cub's EI ran out, and of course he was looking for a job the whole time. It took him ages, but he hired on at a temp agency that I had myself previously worked at. He met many of the people that I had known, and he was doing a lot of the same work that I had been doing. He ended up working at one of the big companies that I had worked for, and he had the same trouble that I had experienced with not being able to get reliable hours. It was either crazy amounts of overtime, 6 and 7 days a week, to the point that Man Cub was sick again, or only 1 or 2 shifts a week. It was impossible to keep up with this. We never knew what was going to happen. So, of course, we never got ahead. But Man Cub did such a good job that the company actually hired him on directly. His boss was very happy with the work he was doing. He's a spider on a very fast assembly line. Now, spider is the position that is responsible for making sure that every station on an assembly line has all the components and hardware and wiring that they need, and making sure that no one ever runs out. If spider doesn't keep every position on the line stocked up, the assemblers have to stop, go find parts, restock their station. It's a really challenging role, but Man Cub was very good about getting all the correct parts to the proper places at all times. We were all very proud of him for doing such a good job and getting the full-time position, including a cell leader. When Man Cub was spider, the line hit their rate numbers. Now, if they just allowed him to stay at this job, he would have probably been fine. But they didn't. They insisted that he train foreign workers how to do his job. He struggled with this because these workers didn't really speak English very well, and Man Cub's version of autism is such that he is not good at socializing with new people at the best of times. So expecting him to constantly train new people how to do his job and then have to go and do a different job, it was torture for him. They were also demanding that he work 6 and 7 days a week. He had no time to get online to socialize with his friends. He had no time to sleep, and he was also still struggling to get back and forth to work in the winter. At one point, Man Cub was even paying another worker $150 a week to drive him back and forth, and yet the guy was still constantly canceling on him. It was nearly impossible. And then I caught COVID, and I gave it to Man Cub, and to Papa Bear, and to Sunny Cub, my middle daughter, who was down visiting us at Wilderness at the time. Now, my job was wonderful, understanding. They gave me a 3-week paid medical leave. Papa Bear was already retired, so he was fine. Sunny Cub lives in a group home in a very large city a couple of hours' drive away from us. She had eventually ended up there after running away from Father Demon and Stepmonster. The workers at the group home confined her to her room while she had COVID, and it was not fun. But she was eventually okay. Man Cub didn't get the same consideration and understanding at his new job as I had received at my job. Because he had missed other days due to trouble getting rides and having days where he was too sick to go to work, they had already been unhappy. When he caught COVID, they didn't give him any tolerance at all. The next time he had to call in, the message was conveniently lost by the person who he had spoken to at work, and he was fired again. And he was heartbroken, blaming himself, saying that he had failed again. He went back on EI, and back to looking for work, and back to trying to work as a temp, because everywhere that he interviewed at said great things, and then they just never called him back. He tried so many places, and every new place was worse than the last one. He thought he might do really well at one temp placement. He really liked working with the older people in the department that the company assigned him to join, but then they started complaining about him not being fast enough and telling him that there was no work for him, and then just never calling him back. Now, a few months later, that factory shut down, and it was apparent that it was never Man Cub that had been the problem. But still, he didn't have any work. Eventually, he ended up in one factory where I knew a young woman who worked there. She contacted me and said what a hard time Man Cub was having. She could see that he was completely overwhelmed, and she told me that he was trying so hard, but it was obvious that he just couldn't do it. She suggested that we give up, stop torturing him, and pursue government disability support for him. So we decided to do exactly that. This was in the early autumn of 2023. First, Man Cub contacted the welfare office to get some money coming in because we were broke and desperate. And then they started to give him direction about what he needed to do and who he needed to see. It was quite discouraging to see how long it was going to take to get the appointments required to even apply for disability support. His first appointment was 7 months after he went on welfare in April of 2024. In the months before that first appointment, Man Cub had to go through the painful process of getting a copy of his diagnosis. This diagnosis was done during the years that he was living with his father demon and step monster. Reading it was really hard for him. He didn't want to admit that he was disabled. It really hurt his pride and his dignity, but he did it. He was very depressed during this time. He was still beating himself up for not succeeding at keeping a full-time job, and the fact that he had no money while on welfare was pretty hard too. On welfare, the amount he gets is less than his share of the rent. So I've been having to cover the difference, and he doesn't get enough money for food either. He regularly goes to the food bank, but of course that's not enough to keep him fed. I've been spending the money I earn at work to buy groceries for both of us. I'm very good with money. I'm very frugal, but I'm sure you all know that food prices have shot way up since the pandemic. So that's been really difficult. In fact, it has been so tight for the last couple of years that if I missed even one day of work, it set us way back. A missed day is $100. I don't have any disposable income, so every missed day is a bill that I can't pay or groceries we can't afford. Now, because my health is so messed up, I have to miss days for doctor's appointments, and I will occasionally miss days for being sick. I work with food, so I can never go to work if my tummy's upset, and there have definitely been many missed days. On top of that, there are also machinery breakdowns and supply chain interruptions and various other reasons why I often do not get my full hours at work every week. Over the last year and a half, we have been simultaneously falling behind financially, while also going through the process of trying to get Man Cub onto the disability support program. It has not been easy. First, there have been a lot of emotional consequences for Man Cub during all of this. It's only in the last month or so, and this is February 2025 right now, so over a year, that Man Cub, he has finally managed to get a counselor. He's been needing therapy, but all he's had was me. Pretty good, and I will do anything for my children, so I've been doing what I can for him. I've spent most of my life trying to understand mental health for myself and for those who I love. But I've been at work and just not able to give him as much time as he needs, which is frustrating for both of us. Most of the time that I have had free this summer was devoted to helping him fill out the forms for disability support. These are not simple forms. They ask very complex questions like, how does your disability affect your life? And how has your disability affected your ability to maintain employment? And what supports do you require? And since Man Cub is not as self-aware as he would have to be able to fill these things out properly, I have spent many hours interviewing him, writing things down, reading it back, talking some more, asking more questions, and then rewriting and doing it over again. It took me several weeks. But eventually I had 10 pages typewritten and ready to submit. My boss was super helpful with getting things downloaded and printed and photocopied. Then Man Cub had to run downtown to drop everything off to his welfare worker so that she could submit the entire package to the correct office. Now, all we had to do was wait, and hopefully our trials would soon be at an end. and Man Cub would have enough money to live on. Now, this disability support is not a huge amount of money, but it's double what he gets on welfare. If he had been granted this small income, everything would have been fine. We found out in the late summer of 2024 that he had been denied. They said he isn't disabled. We were devastated. We didn't understand. He has the diagnosis. We filled everything out. How could he be denied? It's difficult to figure out because he doesn't have the same worker anymore, but it looks like none of the diagnosis paperwork was actually submitted. Okay, so we're rolling with the punches. So for the last 6 months, Man Cub's been getting support from our community legal clinic to appeal the decision and get all the appropriate paperwork filled out. His hearing's scheduled for the end of March. Over a year after. Okay, so he's going to appointments, he's filling out paperwork, I've been talking to new workers. We're trying really hard. What this has meant, though, is that Man Cub is still only getting welfare for income, and I'm still having to pay for everything, and I can't do it. Not with all the sick days and days off for doctor's appointments and missed days from shutdowns at work. I just can't earn enough money. I failed. We got the first eviction notice in the summer. I tried to catch up on the rent arrears then, but I not only could not get any overtime, but since we installed a brand new machine at work and it had another shutdown to do it, I lost even more time. I finally solved the mystery of why my tummy was upset so much, so I decreased my asthma medication, and I was a little better. My asthma was worse, but it was a trade-off I had to make. This is what happens when you live with more than one autoimmune disorder. So I was finally able to work more, but there wasn't enough work for me to get overtime. I settled for just managing to work full-time. I worked 6 weeks straight without taking a single day off, but I was dead exhausted at the end of it. I was literally counting the days until I would be done. I was scheduled to have surgery on my hand in the middle of December, so I knew there was a break coming. I managed to do it, but I didn't manage to earn any extra money to catch up on the rent arrears. I actually fell a little further behind. But I figured that the 6 weeks of predictable income from my short-term disability leave would help me. I convinced myself that it would be okay. Then the one car that we have, the Papa Bear drives, it broke down on the day I was leaving the apartment to go home for the surgery. Another punch to roll with. I broke down twice more over the 6 weeks that I was off after the surgery. Money that we did not have. So much for catching up. How many punches could I possibly roll with? So, at this point, I was talking to the community legal clinic myself, because I now had a hearing with the landlord-tenant board at the end of March. If I can either pay the arrears by then, or at least have a credible payment plan, Man Club and I will be evicted. If I have a payment plan and I miss a single payment, we will be immediately evicted. We won't be safe until the arrears are paid in full, and I can't be late to pay the rent ever again. Okay, so that gets us to the 3rd week of January. I was supposed to go back to work at the beginning of the last week of January. My supervisor contacted me and asked me a bunch of questions, and then on the last Friday of my 6-week leave, January 24th, 2025, I was contacted by the lady from the insurance company, and she said that my employer had denied my return to work. While I was still wearing a splint to protect my finger at work, the one that had been operated on, they said I could not return to work. My surgeon was going to x-ray my finger to see if the bone had grown into the screw that he put in my joint at the end of March. So I was being forced to stay off work for 2 more months. What? The insurance lady did have some good-ish news, though. I would be on medical leave for this time until my employer said that I could return. Now, this would have been wonderful, except for one thing. I would only be getting 60% pay, and I was barely keeping up on 100%. I was blown away. I was panicking. Because I'm friends with colleagues, I knew that we had suffered another major machinery breakdown at work. I knew that we were only running at half capacity. So my supervisor was protecting me. If I had returned on my original return date, I would only be getting around half my pay, if I even managed to get that. So she was definitely looking after me, and I'm thankful. And if my life wasn't already on the knife's edge, it would have been fine. If I wasn't already on the edge of eviction, if I wasn't having to already spend more than I was earning, if I wasn't dealing with multiple car breakdowns, if I wasn't already pushed so far past my financial breaking point, this could have been a welcome rest and some time to myself. But it is not. If I don't manage to raise the $3,000 to pay off the rent arrears, and then enough in addition to cover the shortfall on my income on top of that, to pay bills and buy groceries, ManCub will lose his only home, and I will lose my ability to work at all. So we will be completely lost. So yeah, the consequences of failure are serious. But if we do manage to raise this money, we are actually on the edge of really being able to solve everything. Let me tell you why. I am working on getting another job. So, obviously, after almost 4 years of working, my job, though I love it, I really like tying mortadella. I like the people I work with, but it's not paying the bills. So, I'm going to have to get another job. So, I'm working on getting another job. I used to work in call centers for most of my working career, off and on for years, while I was raising my kids. But I just couldn't get transportation to and from work because I didn't have a vehicle. And so that's why I started working as a temp in factories and on construction sites and such. But there has now been a massive change in work patterns that could be an absolute miracle for me. Since the pandemic, almost all these call center jobs are now done remotely. So all I need is a private room with a good internet connection. Now, that is exactly what I have right here at City Den. We have fiber internet, and I have a private room with a door I can lock. So I can go back to a company that I used to work at, or a different one, and get regular hours without the stress and expense of taking a bus to work every day. Making more money with less stress and less expense? Yes, please. And the really fantastic news? This summer they installed fiber optics cable up our road for internet at home at Wilderness. So I can transition to working from home eventually. Not yet, because Wilderness is too small and there is no private room there for me to have an office. And there's no room for ManCub either. But if ManCub does get his disability income, then I will finally have a little disposable income to spend on building up at Wilderness. I won't be trying to keep up because I won't be missing days of work because I'll be able to work at home. So I'll have that little bit of money to build up at home. I'll be able to do it at my own speed. I can continue to work here at City Den until I'm ready to move my work life out of the city and home to Wilderness. If ManCub does not get his disability income, which is very possible because the government has informed his lawyer that they refused to read the first older diagnosis that was finally submitted to them. So yeah, if ManCub is completely denied, we do have a plan. We will have to move out of City Den over the summer after I get another job. And we'll have a few months over the summer and the fall to build quickly up at Wilderness and make both a cabin for my office and another cabin for ManCub. But with the rent arrears paid, we will be able to spend a little money to buy those few materials and get things set up. Now, since Papa Bear is really good at building, he spent his whole life doing it, and we have a friend up the road with a sawmill and 50 acres of land with standing timber and other natural building materials, we should be able to get ourselves set up before the snow flies again. And we'll be fine. Either way, if ManCub gets approved for disability income or even if he doesn't, we can still get ourselves out of this situation. So this is why I say we are literally on the brink of either disaster or success. But it all depends on getting enough help to get us out of this really deep hole. It is a deep hole to me. $5,000 is a lot of money to somebody who's been poor their whole life. Now, I have been helped a lot over these last 12 years by many of my dear friends. They have sent me money without me ever asking for it. I'm so blessed. I wouldn't normally even ask for help. I have always just put my head down and gone to work to try and get out of any difficulty that I face. But I have been doing that for several years now, and I am past my breaking point. I have done all that I can, and it's just not enough. I need help to save my child and to save myself. So, a friend suggested that I start a GoFundMe to raise the $5,000 that I need to get us out of this hole. So I did this, and I was absolutely blown away by the kindness and generosity that was shown to us. We are already well on our way to raising this money. In fact, we are over 20% of the way there. I figured out that we need that $5,000 amount, and there has already been over $1,000 donated through different channels. Wow! Most have actually come through the GoFundMe, but some friends have also continued to send me money privately. I am just so overwhelmed by all this kindness. My gratitude is immense. I'm actually not panicking anymore. In fact, I'm starting to believe that we can really do this. I have until the end of March to raise this money, and it's the middle of February. So yeah, there's some light at the end of the tunnel, and you know what? I think maybe it's not a train. And I've also seen some other good things come out of this crisis. Because I have so many dear friends in my online community, I have received a lot of good advice and answers to my question over these past few weeks. I now have a plan for how to move forward with taking my YouTube channel to a completely different level. I'm going to create a Discord server for our community to support and inform and enjoy each other. Everyone who donates will be included in this Discord community for radical homemakers. This is my way of giving back to wonderful people who are so kind. So, I've made this video to explain why things are so bad and why I need help. And I'm going to post it on my YouTube channel, and I'll also post it to the GoFundMe that my dear friends have helped me to set up. Whichever platform that you see this video on, you will be able to donate. If you're watching on YouTube, you will find the GoFundMe in the description. If anyone prefers to donate to me privately, you can contact me and I will share the information about how to do that. Either leave a comment below or I'll put my email in the description. Many of you are also Facebook friends, so you can always use Messenger to reach me if you want to have a private conversation. I will be contacting everyone who donates to personally thank you, and also to share the invite to the Discord community once I have it all set up. And I'm really looking forward to that Discord community. I have so many plans for content to put there to help people, and I'm really looking forward to all of my wonderful friends sharing with each other. I want to thank all of you so much. Just by watching this video to the end, you are making a huge contribution. If you like the video and subscribe to my channel Rematriate, then you're making an even bigger contribution. Please share the video widely. And if you are in a position to contribute a financial donation, no matter how small it might seem to you, you are saving me and you are saving Man Cub. You are actually doing what our mission is here on Rematriate. Our mission is to make ourselves a home. And you are helping MamaCass and Man Cub to make ourselves a home. I'm sending all of my love back to all of you because you have all sent me so much love, and it is immensely healing. I cannot begin to thank you enough.